excited that you're here with me this week. I was hoping we were going to have our very first guest, and about, I don't know, 2 hours before we were set to record, they let me know that things got really crazy for them and they rescheduled. So next week we should have a pretty incredible guest, but I'm not going to tell you who, just in case, right? We don't want to jinx it. I'll drop that plug. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast, if you're listening to this and you've got at least a year in recovery, then let me know. Reach out, find me, right? You can email me sunshine@soberwitch.life, and let's have you on. Let's hear your story. As far as what I'm talking about today, there's a whole slew. I get up, I do all sorts of content. I do a lot of writing on, I record the podcast usually on Mondays. I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of like creation. And, most of the time I sit with spirit when I first wake up and have coffee and I'm like, what can I write about? And it's very clear. And today I felt like there was like 5 or 6 different things that I could talk about. And I was having a hard time just landing on one. And I'm going to share with you why that's kind of a beautiful thing, right? Because what I'm actually going to talk to you about today is how we stay sober, how we stay in recovery without feeling bored, restricted, or even like disconnected, right? The truth is, recovery can feel kind of boring. It just can. Excuse me. When we have lived a life fueled by drugs and alcohol, it means that we've often lived a life that's been fueled by a lot of chaos, right? Excitement is what we consider it, right? But in reality, it's a lot of chaos. So when we step out of that, pardon me again, but when we step out of that, and we don't have all of that, what we once upon a time would have called or considered excitement, it can feel boring, right? And I look back at it nowadays and I think about what was exciting to me, putting myself in high risk situations, putting myself at risk of a DUI, putting myself at risk of, sexual assault, putting myself at risk of a gigantic fight with my significant other, putting myself at risk of losing all of my money, right? Because I spent it on drugs and alcohol. Like, goodness gracious, I get 1 or 2 drinks in me and I was liable to run up a tab that was a couple of $100. Or, my God, now that I don't know if I've ever talked about it, buy a bunch of stuff. Like, I've literally spent thousands of dollars online shopping at night, drunk. Like, woke up the next day, realized I bought my ass a Bowflex. It was like $2,500 or some shit. Crazy. Never would have done it if I was sober. Sure wouldn't have, right? So we step into recovery, we get sober, and things can feel, at first, you still have a bit of that chaos because you're trying to navigate all of those emotions. You're trying to navigate, getting back to our emotions. You're overwhelmed by them. So it still feels pretty chaotic. And then it starts to settle down, right? Your emotions aren't controlling you, so to speak, anymore. You're not flip-flopping back and forth in all of this stuff. Life starts to slow down. You realize that a 9 o'clock bedtime sounds like a good time, right? You may even realize that you like waking up in the morning and listening to the birds and drinking your coffee and having a little bit of slowness. Like, what was once considered excitement, or AKA high risk, doesn't exist. And so the new you recognizes this very often as boring, right? And it can feel a little bit empty, right? You may even find yourself, maybe in the first year or two in recovery, going through the emotions that are keeping you sober, going to a meeting, doing what is prescribed, going to therapy, like doing these things, establishing these new habits that you're doing day in and day out. And don't get me wrong, these habits can be incredibly beautiful. They can be really beneficial, right? But for a lot of folks that I have talked to, sober life at some point may start to feel boring, restricted, or you may even feel disconnected because maybe all of the people that once upon a time you used to hang out with, you used to get along with, they're all drinkers, they're all partiers, and you're not hanging with them anymore, right? And this can feel really uncomfortable. This can feel incredibly uncomfortable. This can feel, it can even get you into this thought process of like, I can't keep doing this. Something's got to change again, right? And for a lot of people, it doesn't come out of like nowhere, right? It starts to kind of creep in. You may find out that maybe going to meetings started you there. Like for me, I started going to AA meetings, but at some point I was like, these aren't my people. Like I can't keep showing up here and feeling like I'm half showing up, right? Because I'm having to hide parts of myself, right? Meaning like this traditional recovery space that probably worked for a good handful of folks just wasn't working for me, right? So here I was doing everything right, like you may be doing everything right, and lo and behold, it's feeling boring, right? And you're getting restless. And so if you talk to a lot of folks in recovery, I think what will happen is they'll talk to you about how their life has changed and how they've let things go, right? They have stopped drinking, stopped partying, stopped staying out late. They have, let go of these friends. So in the beginning, or even at, I guess, any point in recovery, we may realize we have let a lot of things go. Well, the truth is in all of this is if you are not replacing or finding new things to do along the way, you're going to end up kind of like with this blank slate, which for some people might be exciting, right? I don't mind not doing a bunch of stuff now. I actually have to practice doing less, still, even 6.5 years into recovery. And there you are, this kind of blank slate. And again, you're bored, you're restless, you're disconnected. And this to me can absolutely be a ripe playground, ripe, fertile ground for relapse, right? Again, because what we once knew as excitement and quote unquote fun was the drinking and the drugging. Okay. What this means though is that your life, the life that you cleared all of this stuff out of, you very well may not have put a bunch of things back in that were engaging, exciting, amazing, right? And I think as adults, this is really easy to do because let's say we step into recovery and we realize there was a lot of things that we neglected, our friends, our family, our loved ones, our children, whatever that may be. So we start pouring into these things, our friends, our family, our loved ones, our children. We start pouring into them, never stopping in any of this, right? To ask what brings us joy, what really feels good to do, how do we want to like be. Well, there was a very large something that fell in the other room from some kitties that just startled me. So you've got a whole bunch of practice staying sober, but you might not have a whole lot of practice in enjoying life, right? And it's not the letting go of the alcohol or the drugs or the relationship or the bad behavior, right? It's the not finding the time, the energy, putting in the effort to find out what things can start to fill your cup. And I'm not talking about self-care here. I'm not talking about the nice bath. I'm not talking about, getting a massage. I'm talking about the things that are fun, that are exciting, that light you up. The question in recovery that we need to start asking ourselves isn't what do I have to give up? It's what do I get to build into my life now? What have I made room for? Enjoying your life sober isn't about, again, forcing yourself to be something else. It's not pretending everything's great, but it's finding experiences that feel like you're engaged, that feel meaningful, feel aligned with who you are. And I say excitement but I'm also meaning like joy. So, you know, for some people, I'll give you an example. We were on retreat a couple of weeks ago and everybody had left and we still had the house for I think a day and a half. And so we were getting everything cleaned up. We were, cleaning out the fridge, doing a lot of the things that you have to do after, you know, however many adults shared a house. And my partner looks at me and he goes, "We have all this leftover food. I don't know what to do with it," right? And so I said, "We'll figure it out. Maybe we'll find some place to donate it." And I had some place in mind I'd asked, but he was taking the garbage out. And somebody had walked up to him on the street outside of the house and said, "Hey man, do you happen to have any food? I haven't had a meal in 2 days." What? So he came into the house, packaged up a whole bunch of food, and gave it to this person. And then he found me. I think I was in the backyard. And he was so lit up. He was so excited. He goes, "That felt incredible. I loved that so much." Right? Was it exciting? No, but it filled him with joy. That's the thing. We've often spent years in active addiction, in active trauma. What we once thought was fun and exciting probably aren't things we can do anymore. So you have to figure out what you enjoy. You have to give yourself the time and space to be able to do that, right? This is what recovery is about. This is what living an amazing, beautiful, sober life is about. For me, I'll share a couple of them. I love having a slow morning. It's very rare I ever have to wake up by an alarm clock. I have one that goes off, mostly because I like to hit snooze. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. I fall back asleep and I, settle it back into a dream I'm having. And, it's one of my favorite ways to lucid dream. But I get these slow mornings. That's what I've created in this life. I get to have coffee. I get to have coffee with my partner. I get to walk outside right now and check the garden, look at what's growing, talk to the plants. These things bring me joy. I get to do this, share with you. I get to lead circle. I get to dig through my craft bin and see what kind of crazy weird thing I'm going to create. I get to come up with a new spell or a new ritual and perform it. These things all bring me joy. They get me excited, right? I love it. I love doing these things. I get to plan time out with my mom, my friends, trips, right? Hoping to make it out to Chicago here in a couple of weeks. I'm not talking about necessarily finding something that's the same. You may not do any of the same things that you once did in recovery or what you once did in active addiction, right? I do love concerts still, but they're far and few between for me. That was something I did a lot, but I did a lot of drinking at concerts. I probably remember less concerts than I actually attended. A lot of drinking, a lot of drugging at concerts, a lot. I love going to them now, but I like a smaller venue. I like something that's a bit more intimate. I like where I can see them up close, that I don't feel like I'm such a number in a crowd, right? These are things that you get to learn. Again, what do you get to build now? I'll do a plug too. If you are uncertain, there's a really lovely app called New Form that I would highly recommend, and it is sober events pretty much throughout the United States. If you don't see anything close to you, then you might want to reach out to them and let them know. But I do think that there are a lot of us early in recovery. Like, I think about it. It took me, granted, I got sober right before the pandemic. So in the bigger part of my sobriety, there wasn't a lot of going out, right? Everybody was kind of holed up in the house. But I baked. I baked every week. I painted every week. I put, acrylic paint on my living room window, my big bay window. I mean, anything I could do. I took walks every single day. All things that I didn't do when I was in active addiction, right? And I know that there are some people out there that may be nervous about stepping into something that maybe you want to try again, like a concert, like karaoke, like going and playing pool, right? Because there might be alcohol around. Then don't do it. Or find a group of other sober individuals to do it with, right? The reality is when your life in and of itself lacks stimulation, lacks joy, your brain is going to look for a way to fill that. It wants that dopamine, right? That's a lot of what addiction is. It's just being addicted to the dopamine hit. So if you aren't filling all of your life with things that you enjoy, that bring you happiness, that bring you excitement, right? Again, you're in this void. You've removed a bunch and not put anything back in, and that is a dangerous place to be, right? I love personally finding things that I can do with other sober folks. I mean, who would have thought I ever would have done sober karaoke? Amazing. It was so much fun. Used to take me 3 drinks to stand up in front of a mic. And there I was, sober as a kitten, singing in my pajamas. Yes, there's a video on the internet of that, right? When we get to do these things with other sober people, I mean, this to me is like, it's like stepping into a whole new world. My personal belief, right? Again, it's not the boredom. That can be a problem. It's not the restlessness, though that can be a problem. This like disconnection from other people, like feeling like you're the only one that's ever having this challenge, right? When we aren't doing the things that we enjoy, when we aren't doing things that are building us excitement and fun, all of these things isolate us, disconnect us from others, from ourselves. As human beings, we aren't meant to just exist. We're meant to be here, to be present, to feel, to connect, to experience things, right? Emotion is a big part of the human experience. Why wouldn't we choose emotions like peace and love and happiness and joy, excitement, awe, wonderment? I say all this to say, find something new and exciting to do. And that might be taking a look at the New Form app. That might be Googling to see if there's any sober witch events in your area, sober events in your area, witch events in your area, metaphysical stores that are holding events, conferences, whatever it may be, right? But I also want to extend an invitation to join us. Right now, we have 2 different retreats that are scheduled. One is Sober Witch Camp this fall, so fall of 2026. My goal is to offer this every single year. And the other one is next spring down in New Orleans. If you want to be around witches that get what it means to be sober, I'd encourage you to come check us out. You can visit soberwitch.life, so www.soberwitch.life, and it'll have everything you need to find out what's going on. And each of these experiences, I've been thinking a lot about, well, I think a lot about everything, but lately it's been about being in recovery and connecting with people. And I want to do more of these in-person events. I want to do more of these in-person experiences. And the Sober Witch Camp has been has been born because I believe we need time set aside to play, right? So if you've been wondering what it is that you could build, if you find that you were like, hey, I removed all this stuff and now I need something else, I'd encourage you, seek us out. If not us, find someone else. Find a conference, a store, a buddy, something, right? Because being sober does not need to be boring. It just means you have to find something new to do, right? Because if you want long-term sobriety, you've got to create a life that you love living. And I guarantee you that means trying new things. Well, all right, my dear friends. I hope you come find us. Or, even let me know, what are some cool things that you like to do? Maybe I can put up a whole list. Reach out, sunshine@soberwitch.life. That's the whole email address. And yeah. Until next time, my dear sweet friends. Much love from me.